Good morning. It is morning. It is Thursday morning, March 14th, 2024. And the video you're about to watch is me. By the way, welcome to the channel. My name is Larry, all right? But I call the channel Poppa Paints because my name is also Poppa. This is for anybody who's new. For those of you who've watched for a while, thank you for doing that. My grandson calls me Poppa. I couldn't wait to hear him say those words because when he was little, he didn't say them. Of course, we don't talk when we're born. My son asked me what I wanted to be called when he was able to talk to him about me. And I said Poppa because that's what I called my grandfather. So I am Poppa. Poppa. I know it's not the way everybody spells it, but that's the way I spelled it when I was a kid for my grandfather. So that's the way I'm spelling it for me. And so the channel is called Poppa Paints. So today I'm going to paint this card. And I have a little different way I did it today because I was talking about this place that I painted here. It's a spot here, not too far from where I live in Florida, near Lake George. I can't remember the name of the park, actually, but Robin and I took a walk there one time. Anyway, it's real Florida, and I did this with real paint. Real Florida with real paint. All right, enough of the intro. Let's keep going with how I did this. For those of you who like to paint, I didn't do a whole lot of explaining today. You're just going to have to watch. For those of you who want to hear my little spiel about the Florida Wildlife Corridor, stay tuned. It's coming up right now. Okay. Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? I'm starting to feel that my cold is maybe almost gone. It's not completely gone, but I don't feel bad at all. Just thought I would share this with you. All right, let's start. So, I was reading about the Florida Wildlife Corridor. Now, I suppose there's a political discussion happening about this. But what it is, and I'm not going to talk politically because I don't have any clue. Usually when there's politics involved in something, it means there's money involved with something, right? Or land ownership. That's the kind of thing that usually stimulates political talk. And I'm going to leave that to those people who know about that kind of thing. But I just want to talk about the area where I live. Now, I am a transplant. I moved here with my family when I was 17. I'm in Florida, in Central Florida, in Ocala, Florida. And so I moved here when I was 17, so that was 1972. And I moved from a drastically different area. I moved from Long Island, New York. I still love Long Island. And even though I was, outside the city, I was in Merrick, North Merrick, whatever. Levittown, if you know that area. Levittown, Merrick, Freeport. For those of you who know the area, that's the area I'm originally from. And it's an area I go back to a lot because I grew up there. And I still have some friends there. I have a couple of cousins there. My cousins live in Central Islip. But as a kid, I would go into the city a lot on the train. When I say a kid, I don't mean 5 years old. I mean like when I was 14. So, yeah, I would be the kid who would hop the Long Island Railroad and either pay my fare or avoid the conductor. Probably the wrong thing to do, but I was 14 and I had, a few dollars. I used to work part-time at a church on Sundays and Saturdays, setting and unsetting the chairs and washing the blackboards and crap like that. So I always had a few dollars, and I was really I really loved music, and I knew that some of the record stores in New York City had stuff that I wouldn't find. I probably could find them on Long Island, but here's the thing: when you're in New York City, it's still true today. Everything is so close to each other. Like on Long Island, just like here in Ocala, if you wanted to compare records, for example, I don't even know if there are record stores. Maybe there are. But you really have to drive far to find some place to compare it to. In the city, you could just walk a block and you find another record store. Okay, well, that's enough about that. So basically, I moved here with my family because my father retired from the New York City Police Department, and he was so anxious to leave there. Looking at what he had to do, I don't blame him for wanting to get a quieter place. So they moved to this place called Rainbow Lakes Estates. The mailing address was Dunellen, and suddenly I found myself in 11th grade in high school, in a completely different world. And I had a love-hate relationship with it. I did, because I loved it. It was beautiful. You could walk around. Like I never could walk around on Long Island. I mean, the woods went on forever. I think Rainbow Lakes Estates had been, prior to it being a development, it had been a tree farm, I think. I really don't know. But I would walk around all the time in the woods. I am not telling. I'm not lying to you. Why would I lie to you? But it was so different. And my brother Bill and I, Bill was 2 years younger than me, so we would explore the area. I didn't have a driver's license yet. I know I was old enough to have one in most places, but in New York, you didn't get one at that age. Down here, everybody had one. All the kids my age had a driver's license. Oh, so it was that summer of '72 that I got a driver's license. And by the way, I'm just trying to keep this very light right here, because I want some dappled light over here and here. Just putting it really super light so I can keep the dappled light effect. You can see I'm using light blues, just a wash of blue and green, and this like dirty yellow ochre here. So anyway, this kind of has something to do with why I'm painting this picture here. It's my little story. So I would go with my brother Bill, and we'd just discover whatever was in the area, and later on we got some friends, and some of those friends are still friends today, which is very cool. And I remember walking through the woods and finding like the skull. I'm not kidding. A skull of a cow just lying there, or the skeleton of, I don't know, an armadillo, or the skeleton of a possum, or the carcass of an animal that had died not too long earlier, And then you would find these holes in the ground, and you got to learn that they were called gopher tortoises. Well, a lot of them, local people called them gophers, but they weren't furry. I called them turtles, but I was wrong. They're tortoises. They're land animals. And it was very cool. Some of the things we would see, and the trees were just everywhere. The grass was everywhere. The wildlife was everywhere. We didn't see any like deer in there, but later on, when we got older, we go to places that did have things like deer, like in the Ocala National Forest, which was a little bit of a drive, on the Rainbow River, which was very close. Actually, I worked for a little while at a place called Rainbow Springs, which was, at that time, considered like a tourist attraction. So yeah, a lot of people would visit there. And the thing about Rainbow Springs, let me talk about the Rainbow River. This was maybe my first introduction to why I'm telling you all this today. The Rainbow River was and is one of the most beautiful rivers you're ever going to see. I know you want to argue with me about your river, and I'm sure yours is beautiful. But this is truly a beautiful river. It's like I think it's a 5-mile long river. It basically starts at the headwaters or the springs, and it travels down toward the city of Denellen, where it empties into another river called the Withlacoochee River. And my brother Bill was more of an outdoorsman than I was, but I still love the river. But the reason I want to talk about Bill is a little bit is because he had friends that were, that their parents were in the canoe rental business and stuff like that. And so Bill would be out on canoes all the time, and he would invite me sometimes to go with him. And I'm telling you, there was nothing like it. I mean, you can take a rowboat in Central Park. It's not the same as canoeing in the Rainbow River or the Silver River. Now that I'm older, or so many rivers, not just here in Florida, but everywhere. Okay, so it all seemed just beautiful, just like I had moved to a place that was basically heaven. Basically a beautiful, beautiful place. And was home to a lot of animals. So did I see the animals back then? I don't remember really coming across animals a whole lot. In the water, you would see the birds. You would see the anhingas and the cormorants, I think they were called. So you would see some stuff, and you would see in Rainbow Springs itself, they had some enclosures, so they did have some captive animals. And I know your feeling about that. I don't disagree with you. But back then, that was kind of the way it was. You know, you saw animals in a zoo, even in New York. That's where you saw animals. You didn't see wild animals in New York City. Well, a different kind of wild animal, maybe. But you saw the wild animals, the bears and everything. You saw them in a zoo. The Central Park Zoo was usually the zoo I saw animals in, although the much bigger zoo up there is the Bronx Zoo. All right, I'm getting off on a tangent here. I want to just tell you about this. So fast forward to the future, to now. Fast forward to, like, not now, but I don't know, when Robin and I first started doing Robin and the Giant and started playing for children. And I wrote a song for Robin and the Giant, which I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but that's Robin and I. We called ourselves Robin and the Giant. We played songs for children. And I wrote a song for us called Forest Screen. And in the song it says, "All I want is a world to pass on to the children, as green as the world passed on to me." So now that I told you what I told you, you see where that came from. That came from the idea that I had been in a world up in New York that wasn't as green as the world was here. It wasn't as fresh. It wasn't as untouched. Here, it was untouched. Here, there were trails in the woods and wildlife. And you could walk out into there was a lake near where we lived, and you could stand there and you could listen. You could hear the alligators. You could hear them. I wasn't a scientist. I didn't know everything I was listening to. I was a kid, basically, back then. And even now, you know, if I hear sounds in the woods, I don't know exactly what I'm hearing. But when I wrote the song Forest Green, that's what I was trying to express. That I just want to do whatever I can do to make sure that the world in the future for the children, my children and my children's children, so that they have a beautiful world just as the one that I was given. Because what if, like, this whole area, suddenly you didn't have all the clean rivers and all that? So the song goes, all I want is a world to pass on to the children, green as the world passed on to me. Keep it alive from the seas to the skies. Let each breath the children take come easily. Yes, because, one of the things that was an issue back in those days was air pollution. It still is. I think we've done a lot, we as a society, we've done a lot to clean up the air, but not everything. I mean, we could do more, and we are doing more. I don't want to get into an argument about global warming because I don't need to talk about whether the world is warming up or not. I don't know if it is. I did a radio show for a long time, and I know we had people who disagreed with other people, but I would always say, why do we even need to know that when it's already obvious that there's a lot of pollution? It's already obvious that there's a lot of stuff we can do to clean up the rivers. The Bronx River. I don't know if you ever saw a video on the Bronx River. You could not swim in the Bronx River. So I want to compare that just for a second to what I discovered here in Florida. I discovered this beautiful river. And up in the Bronx, you couldn't swim in that river. Oh my gosh, you wouldn't even want to. People would joke about it. You can't swim in the Bronx River. They would always say there's bodies in there, and who knows? That's probably true. I don't know. But all I know is it was a dirty, dirty, dirty river. And not so much now. And that's what I'm getting at. There's people who have said enough is enough. And they went out there in canoes and in boats and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and civic groups. They decided that they had enough. They wanted it to be clean. This is their backyard. And now I do see people canoeing in the Bronx River, just like they do here in Florida on the Rainbow River, just like here. So now going to kind of relatively recently, Robin and I retired from radio, and we suddenly weren't stuck in a studio doing a radio show all day long. Suddenly we were free. And so we would use our free time. We'd take bicycles, we'd go hiking. And there are some places right here in our own backyard, I mean literally just a few miles from here, that are considered part of the Cross Florida Greenway. What this is there used to be a plan to build a canal that went across the state of Florida. It was going to be called the Cross Florida Barge Canal. And the people who planned it had good intentions. It was going to make commerce easier. It was going to make it easier to transport goods, like products, from one point to another point. It was going to make it easier. It was going to make it quicker. It was going to make it cheaper, blah, blah, blah. But there was a lady, and it was more than just her, but there was a lady who's given credit. Her name was Marjorie Harris Carr. And she pointed out that if you dig this big old canal and go across Florida, you're going to be disturbing the underground water, the underground rivers, which they call the aquifer. They call it the Floridan or Florida aquifer. And people make fun of that. But that's the water we drink. That's the water that makes it possible to live here. That's the water that comes up from the bottom, from deep in the earth, and spills out into the rivers, the Rainbow River. The Rainbow River is the Florida aquifer on the outside. It came up out of the ground and it's flowing. It's been doing that for thousands of years. Okay, Silver River, same thing. A lot of the different rivers in our area, same thing. So this lady, Marjorie Harris Carr, she had a campaign to get the government to stop building this this canal. And they had started. I can show you, maybe one day we'll go over there. But you can look it up. They had started to dig. There's a canal already partially dug. And unfortunately, I guess it didn't do, I don't know if it did any harm or not, but I'll leave somebody else to tell you that. All I know is she stopped it. And now the land that was set aside for that canal was all purchased by the government. Because, like eminent domain, you know how that works, right? Where the government forces people to sell their property. I know, it's this. But it is what it is, and that's what happened, okay? So the land was sold, or acquired, I guess. And now there's this stretch of land that goes all the way from Florida's west coast, in Yankeetown, I think it's called, or Inglis, someplace over there, not too far from where I'm talking to you. It goes all the way across the state, and it goes kind of it kind of goes northeast. So I think it goes up to like Jacksonville or something. And so all of that land was set aside. So they decided to call it the Greenway. Now, fast forwarding to the future, and it's a series of trails. And what do you think happened? Not right away, because we didn't have as many people moving to Florida as we do now, or as we have in the last maybe 30 years. But all of a sudden there was a lot more people moving here, and as construction was happening, the animals were being displaced. So, you know, the thought was, well, they'll find a new place. There's plenty of open spaces. Okay. Well, there's truth to that, so we're not going to argue that. But animals migrate. People don't realize how far, I didn't realize how far a deer will travel. What are they traveling for? I don't know. Maybe to find a mate, maybe to find food, maybe it's just part of their instinct, but they do. They travel. And so do the deer, and so do the birds. The birds have an advantage because they can fly. And so as the state started to grow and houses started to displace animals, what else happened? Well, there were roads being built, highways, interstates. Okay, well, what happens when there's a place where an animal wants to go, and there's a big freaking highway with all this traffic? Well, the animal doesn't know. The animal crosses the road. If he's lucky, he makes it across. If he's not lucky, he gets hit by a car or a truck, and the animal dies. And sometimes so do the people who in the car. So the animals migrate. So the Cross-Florida Barge Canal became a corridor for the animals to safely go from point A to point B. But the problem was there were some interstates in the way. There were some highways in the way. There's one called I-75. There's one called US 27. There's all these different roadways. And so those people who wanted to protect the animals were being called tree huggers or whatever. Environmentalist nuts, okay? Because the people who didn't care about that didn't care. They just didn't care. But what I noticed was we had built, when I say we, our community had built a land bridge, a bridge that goes over I-75 that was built not for cars, but for walkers, for animals. I think it was marketed, or I think it was pitched to the people as a place you could walk across, but not that many people actually go there. Rob and I have gone there, and it's beautiful, really. But what happens is there might be a 20-mile stretch a 20-mile stretch that would be considered a deer crossing or a bear crossing, right? There's all of this area that is considered a crossing. Well, the animals don't want to be killed, and the animals are not stupid. Animals are smart. And so when they built that land bridge, guess what happened? It wasn't just the animals that normally would cross at that point, it was all of them. All of the animals that needed to get from point A to point B suddenly realized it was safer to use that bridge. Okay? Now you might be laughing. You might be saying, Larry, come on. You're an artist. What do you know about these things? Well, okay. I'll take that insult. I'll take that argument. Because I don't disagree with you. I'm not an expert on this. But when I read that the animals, because I didn't discover this, I read this report. When I discovered that these animals were using that, even though they had to travel, they had to walk like 40 miles just to get to the bridge, to get to the other side. And then they had to walk 40 miles back to the trail they were going, the original trail they were going on. So all of this had to happen. And it occurred to me that all the people who were against it weren't realizing one thing, that those animals were no longer crossing the road, and therefore there were no longer any people dying and getting hurt because the car hit an animal. The car hit a cow. It could be a wild cow. There was wild cows back then. I don't know if they still are. A wild deer, a wild bear. These animals were no longer being hit at that stretch of the highway because they were using the land bridge. Okay. Conservationists, environmentalists, people who studied this way more than I have, decided to look at it, and they said that there are places all over. There are places all over the place that that have animal migration trails, if you will. Okay? So they have these trails. And the animals don't just stay, just as I was talking about, they don't just stay in one tiny area. They migrate. And they migrate from point A to point B. Some of them travel, I am not exaggerating, some of them travel all the way from Disney World, which I know they don't go to Disney World, but you know what I'm talking about in that area. Some of them travel all the way from that part of the state, which is near Orlando, near Kissimmee. I think you probably all know that. And they'll go all the way to like the Georgia state line, or into Georgia. They don't see state lines. They don't know. They don't know one line from another. They travel. So all of these protected areas, like the state parks, all of those protected areas that are now there for us to enjoy as humans, and for the animals to be a little bit free and safer. But they're not connected. But the animals don't know that. They just want to go where they go. They're looking for a mate. They're looking for food. They're looking for whatever they're looking for. They've got instincts we don't even understand, I bet you. Or at least I don't. Maybe some of you do. Whoops, that's a little bit too blue. All right, I'm going to make this really light here. So there's a group of people, and this is where the politics comes in. They said we need to get some of that land that is now owned by ranchers and farmers and horse people, etc. We need to get some of that land and set it aside to create corridors so that the animals can go from this place to that place. And that's the Florida Wildlife Corridor System that you can look up. You can see what it is. You can see where it is. You can see that it's right here where Robin and I live. It's very close to where I'm painting this picture and making this video. We're going to go to one of the areas today. That's why I'm kind of excited about it. That's why I'm painting this picture. So So we're going to go and we're going to videotape some of the areas. And it looks like, when I was reading yesterday, it looks like a lot of the areas that were set aside for the purpose of being a corridor to allow the animals to migrate from one place to another. Looks like a lot of them have been successful, but it looks like there's more that needs to be done. And one of the ways that they do it is, as I mentioned, they have a land bridge. And another way is they build underneath the roads these passageways that go underneath. And just like with the land bridge, the animals find these passages. They find them. And they use them in the same way as the animals use the land bridge. They find them and they make their way across. They go from point A to point B. And they don't get hit by a car. And the cars don't get damaged. And the people in the cars don't get hurt. And so I think it's a really good idea. And it looks like some of the ranchers get it. They want the land to be, because a lot of these ranchers have had the land that they work, that they own. It's been in their family for centuries. Yeah, some of these guys have been around a long. They haven't been around a long time, like me. But the land has been in their family for a very long time, and they remember. Or they have stories, or maybe they do remember if they're old enough, when the land was way different than it is now. There weren't so many roads and there weren't so many houses. Even I remember, Robin and I live in a place where there used to be coyotes. I walked outside one time and I saw a coyote. I had never seen a coyote in my life. But he was there and I knew he was a coyote. I watched Roadrunner, so I know what a coyote looks like. That's a joke. But I recognized, I knew it was a coyote. So, but we don't see them anymore. And there used to be bunny rabbits, lots of bunny rabbits here. We don't see them anymore either. And if you walk into the Ocala National Forest, you will see animals if you know where to go. Or if you go early enough. Robin and I took a bike ride one time at a bicycle trail that connects Gainesville, Florida to Hawthorne, Florida. And boy, did we have a sight. We saw deer, we saw owls, we did see alligators, yes. And it was just, I think you can see alligators any time of the day. But a lot of those animals, they just only come out like early in the morning when there's not a whole lot of activity. So this picture that I'm working on right now is a picture, one of the pictures that I took with my phone. Well, the reference is not this picture. Hold on, I gotta get my coffee. Let me use a different brush too. I like this brush. Let's see. Which brush? Yeah, I like this one better. So the Cross Florida Barge Canal is part of what I want to tell you about. I also wanted to tell you about the Florida Wildlife Corridor. And if you look it up, I'm not the expert on this, but if you look it up, you will see that there are some successful places where these corridors are making a difference. They're not only good for the animals, they're good for the people, and it's good for the environment in general. And you can see the benefits of it. And I do think there's a political aspect to this. I do think there's a land ownership aspect to this, and I think all of the concerns should be respected. I think everybody who's got a concern about it should be heard, and everybody should understand the whole picture. And I don't pretend to know the whole picture. All I know is that the animals and the people we just have to coexist. People have to coexist with each other. That's the easy one to see. But a lot of times we don't respect the animals as much as we should. We consider them as tools, as food. And I know they are. But you know what? We have a responsibility to protect this world. It is a beautiful world. Well, it's a beautiful planet. It's a beautiful earth. You know, there's a difference between the world and the earth. I think the world, just not to be picky on words, but I think the world is like the borderlines, the nations, the states, the cities. That's the world, the people. I think the earth is what I'm painting here. I'm painting the trees, I'm painting the leaves, I'm painting the water, I'm painting the reflections in the water. I'm painting a habitat, I'm painting a place where animals, if they could see a painting, would say, oh, I love that place. Oh, I grew up in that place. Here in Florida, there's a place called the what do you call it again? The Lake Wales Ridge. For those of you who know Florida, Lake Wales is the place where the Bach Tower is. And it's a beautiful, beautiful garden. But there's a ridge that's got that name, the Lake Wales Ridge. And it goes from north to south, like from just south of Disney World to 100 miles south. That's where it all is. And it is the highest point in Florida. It's the part of the state that has the highest elevation. And according to everything I've read about it, at one time that was all there was to Florida. Florida wasn't a peninsula back then, it was an island. And it wasn't called anything, I'm sure. Well, maybe the natives who lived here at that time, I'm sure they gave it a name. Right? But that's the old beach, believe it or not. That's what the beach was, right in the middle of the state. So where I'm sitting right now was probably 100 feet underwater. Isn't that amazing? That's just an amazing thing to think about. So the old beaches, and you can find shells. You can find shells everywhere in Florida, not just at the beach. The ones at the beach would be new shells, but some of these are ancient shells. I am not exaggerating. You can find them. I'm going to try to make a video and put it on YouTube and show you guys. Right now I just want to paint this picture. You see it's coming together. What do you think of the picture, huh? Just trying to make sure there's enough greenery and enough contrast here. And I definitely want to make sure this blue and this blue sort of come together. So that, I love that rich blue right there. I'm going to keep it just like it is. I add some more darks and lights over here. So yeah, this is a place Robin and I walked to, we walked on a trail. And there's a lake there called Lake George. And there was I don't know if it was a controlled burn or if it was actually a wildfire. But anyway, the woods had been burned, and it allowed us to see stuff we couldn't have seen. Now these are not burnt trees, by the way. They might look burnt. No, but we could see the wildlife in places where they had been and where they probably still are. I'm always worried when I do that kind of a walk that we might come into an animal I don't want to come across, like a bear or a wildcat of some sort. Yeah, I don't think about that stuff. I do. You can probably hear the birds outside right now on the video here. But the birds, the whole idea of having a corridor, a wildlife corridor, you might think the birds don't need that because they can fly. But they do. They need a place to land. They need a place to find food. And so it does affect them as well. Again, I'm not an expert. I was reading on it though, so I'm kind of rehashing what I read to you. I'm rehashing to you what I read, is what I mean to say. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to later on. We're going to go hiking a little bit. I can't hike too far. I get winded. I get winded real easy. But I can do a little bit. And I can do a little bit at a time. Just look at that beautiful little tiny hair coming off of that brush to make these tiny little lines. Isn't that amazing? And that's kind of what I want. I want this whole thing to look like a natural, like real Florida. Yeah. Disney World is nice. But if you're visiting Florida, you gotta check out some of the state parks. If you're visiting any place, really, gotta see the natural area. Alex and I went to Tennessee one time, and we took one of those. Alex is my son, by the way. We took a what do you call it? Like a rapids raft. One of those, rides down the rapids. I did that when I was a kid in Cody, Wyoming, with my family. So it was kind of like that. It was very, an easy one for tourists, but it was fun. It was fun and super memorable, and you could see the pride in the lady who was the guide. You could hear the pride in her voice about the land and about the environment. That was her home. That was where she grew up. That's the area she knew everything about. But we just enjoyed it, and that's it. When you go someplace, if I were to take you to Long Island, I would show you the things I was proud about with Long Island. If I were to take you here, someplace around here, it's the same thing. I've learned a lot in the years I've been here. So now I'm going to kind of leave it like that. I think I want to add just a little bit more blue to that. I hope I don't ruin it by doing that, but I'm going to try. I just like the way that blue looks at the bottom here. And yes, I am using the Winsor & Newton watercolor paints. I love these paints. I don't think I'll be using any gouache today. I think this is working out nicely. I just want to add some blue up here. Make sure there's some blue in that sky, because this blue is a reflection of that blue. So this is like a little waterway that we stumbled upon in the woods, as maybe like a little river or something, a tributary outside of Lake George. I heard the weatherman one time talking about how much water is in a large thunderstorm cloud, a large cumulonimbus, or whatever they call them. And he was saying that there's enough water to fill Lake George. He was from the area here. And I thought, that's incredible. There's that much water in a cloud. That much water. I'm going to add a little bit of blue-green, I think. Is that blue-green? Yeah, a little bit of turquoise right there. I want this area to look like it looked when I was there. It was marshy, it was swampy. The water was sharing the space with the mud, with the undergrowth. Get some of that blue-green in the sky. A little bit more mid-ground colors, so it's not all super bright. And I did get the dappled light effect over here. That's what I was hoping for. It's a little bit too green right there, but that's okay. I'll spread it out. I'll darken it. So when you paint something that's not defined, a defined thing would be like a car or a flower or even a person. But you're doing something like this, it's not really defined. There's so much going on in it. And at first, the challenge is, oh my gosh, how can you paint all of that stuff? All of those limbs, how are you going to do all of that and make it look right? Well, you don't. You don't worry about it. You just paint like the shapes. You paint the areas of light and dark. That's how you do it. That's the secret. A little bit more down here. I think I want it a little bit darker toward the front here. Or the bottom, if you will. Okay, I think I'm done. So again, I used the Winsor & Newton pan watercolors. I'm going to buy another one soon. These are the two I have right now. There's some dried gouache in there. There's the other one. Can you see it? And I just used a handful of brushes. I didn't even use those two. So we'll let it dry. But I think it's done. What do you think? Yep, that's the natural Florida. That's the real Florida right there. All right, thank you for watching. See you later.